China and the United States are both countries rooted in culture unlike any other.
When comparing the general differences of these cultures, they are apparent through population, language, religion, and government. China contains approximately 1.4 billion people, while the United States peaks at around 319 million. Both very similar in size, thus more packed China would be. China is severely dominated by one culture group. US is a melting pot, but it still averages around a greater percentage in one culture as well. In language, we see another similarity, where each have a dominating language, China's being Mandarin, US being English, but both do have other languages in the mix as a minority. In terms of religion, though, we see them as inverted in comparison, Buddhism being a dominant religion in China while Christianity is in small count. While in the US, Christianity is the dominant religion and Buddhism is in the lesser account. China and America, the two countries, differ vastly with a few similarities in governmental order. The United States stands as a federal republic in which individuals elect their own leaders and where central government allows each state to express particular rights when self-governing. China, on the other hand, maintains a government run by the National People's Congress, which is the country's Communist Party. This type of government is more hierarchical.
When compared to the culture map devised by Aaron Myers, one can clearly see how the cultures of the two countries mirror and differ from one another. Here, you'll see the position that both countries take on all 8 scales. Notice that China and the US are only similar on the scales of persuading and deciding, with both countries preferring to persuade by presenting the application first and make decisions with a top-down approach. That is, having a main spokesperson for the nation who represents the citizens. We see this in the form of the Chinese president Xi Jinping, while the United States has Donald Trump. On the other 6 scales, the US and China differ greatly. On the scale of communication, one can see that the US sits at the lowest point, suggesting that the US assumes little, while China depends on more intuition from its citizens. Next, when we view the evaluating, leading, and confrontation scales, we see that the US prefers a blend of each 2 poles. China, however, shows favoritism towards indirect negative feedback, avoiding confrontation, and having a hierarchy. Lastly, on the trusting and scheduling scale, the two nations show separate interest in trusting on a relationship or task-based level and valuing a more flexible or set schedule.
In the 6 dimensions of comparison, China has a much greater acceptance toward the power gap in society to where they even grow an optimistic view of it, while the US also has a great power difference in society, but they are less accepting and cling to whatever gives them each authority over each other. Where we see the greatest difference in these cultures is their view in individualism. China would lean more toward a collective rather than serving their own agenda, while in America, the values they hold gravitate heavily on self-serving in almost every way. The greatest similarities in each country's culture definitely stem through their societal values on masculinity. By masculinity, I mean the societies will be driven by competition, achievement, and success. Ambiguity is seemingly part of the Chinese culture, such as the double meaning they have ensnared within their language. While the US also has a good acceptance toward uncertainty, their culture still has many issues with lacking intelligence. When dealing with preparing for the future, the difference in these cultures is that China is a long-term outcome focus and the US is a short-term, meaning Chinese culture values setting one's future greater than most countries, especially the US. And when we come to the ideals of restraint of acting on impulses, each country characterizes the polar idea on this matter, China being a self-limiting type and the US being a self-pleasing type.
Finally, when examining Chinese immigrants who are in the process of acculturation within the U.S., a few cultural conflicts may arise. For example, if a Chinese immigrant is seeking a job, they may find that many American businesses lack a sense of collectivism, while at the same time have higher levels of shared knowledge between all employees. While these two countries have many differences, Chinese immigrants may find similarities in the two cultures, including, but not limited to, masculinity and uncertainty avoidance. Being more different than alike, individuals from both cultures can expect to encounter at least some culture shock when moving and find that adapting to the new culture takes time and open-mindedness in order to accomplish.